Welcome to another episode of Field Phone Ops. Today we're going to talk about control groups, the AN GRA-6 and the AN GRA-39. So sit back and I hope you learned something. And here we go. We're going to compare the AN GRA-6 GRA-6 with the AN GRA-39. Basically, after World War II, they had to come up with a better system. They had a system called an RC-261, which was rather primitive. It allowed them to remote a radio about a half mile using two devices, but you had to have an actual headset to wear, an actual hand mic to talk into. It didn't have the ability to actually call back and forth between the units and coordinate activities or anything. And you were stuck with using like I said, a hand microphone or a headset that actually plugged in using the phono jacks. So basically, about the time Korea will start kicking off, they decided we need to come up with something better. This is what they came up with. They came up with the AN GRA-6. This is it. This is the remote unit right here. Local unit on top. Basically, you connect the field wire here and here. Could run about 2 miles remote to radio. You use one of these U77 connectors, which was the big connector at the time for all the radios and such. And they used a H39 handset, like this right here, that plugged in, connected a handset here and a handset here. This was in your command post, your talk, or the area where you want to remote from. And this was actually at the radio itself, and it's connected onto the radio. Some of these units, I don't have one, actually had the ability to connect to two radios. It actually gave the operator here the ability to switch right here between set 1 or set 2, depending on which radio you wanted to use. One of the problems with this setup right here was, once you had this all hooked up, you couldn't listen to what was going on in radio traffic without holding the handset to your head the whole time. So they came up with this as the splitter. Allowed you to basically connect a speaker in place along with the handset so you could hear what was going on. And this is the actual loudspeaker they used right here. It had this connector. So you connect the speaker on one side, handset on the other, you could hear what was going on. This used two D-cell batteries in each unit to do the audio part. Basically, they function as field phones. You connect these up to a TA312 or an EE8 or any other field phone. You can actually make phone calls to them. You have the hand crank right here on each one. They can send a ring. They can receive a ring. They have little indicators so you know it's ringing. So it's a cheap alternative to a field phone. This unit, the remote unit right here, actually had a 45-volt battery in it. And that's how it keyed the radio at the other end. They say they would set it to radio, the radio function switch right there, and key the handset. It would then trigger a relay in here with the 45 volts, which would key the radio. Then they could talk, and everything would go, and they'd release it. Everything would go back to normal. The local unit actually had connections right here. This is what it was going to operate as. You either operate as a telephone, if you're talking on a telephone, an actual carrier wave or FSK. Believe it or not, at the time that these came out, Morse code and telegraph was still a viable option for military communications at the time. So that's what the selector was for. And then you had just normal AM right there. That was normal AM operations on the radio. Then right here, you could operate the radio in either local mode, which means whoever was plugged in right here was using the radio. Telephone mode, which meant the person plugged in here was talking as the telephone on the other end, or remote mode. In remote mode, the actual remote control set right here actually was keying and listening to the radio. This worked good. The only problem with this, because it used DC keying, it couldn't go through a field switchboard, a BD71 or 72 or an SB22 at the later date, or SB86. The DC voltage that was on that 45 volts was filtered out by some of the filtering and coil equipment, loading coils inside the telephone equipment, so that was the only issue. But you could go 2 miles. So about the early 60s, they started working on a replacement for the GRA-6 and came up with the AN GRA-39, also called the AN GRA-39 by the Army troops and stuff. This was in use from the early 60s into the 2000s. We still use these when I was in the Air National Guard big time. Basically, one of the main differences was, I don't know if you can see, the size difference between the local and remote here was rather significant. These are basically about the same size. They are physically, dimension-wise, they're the same. The remote end weighs, I think, a half pound more than the local end weighs. The other big change was they went to using U229s and H250 handsets. You can see the difference between the old connector right here and the new connector. They also added a speaker to the remote unit, so you could actually set this up right here on the controls. You can set it to, let's see, radio, and turn the speaker on right there. This controls the actual volume of the speaker. So basically you could hear in the speaker what was going on in the radio. You didn't have to hold the handset to your head the whole time. Then when you wanted to talk on it, you could leave it sitting there like that, or you could put it right there in the telephone mode, which lets you actually talk on the telephone to the other end. And there was the handset mode for the radio. I'm sorry, I got sort of confused here. Field wire connected right here in these binding posts. This is the actual way you called the other end. You'd actually pump that a few times, and it would cause this end to ring. Had a little indicator light on it so you could see the ring was coming on. It was adjustable for dimness. Had a volume adjustment on the ringer right here. This little thing right here turned around back and forth. So this is a pretty handy device. Having the speaker on it was a lot better than having to have all the splitters and external speakers and stuff that the old GRA-6 used. Both of these used 6 D-cell batteries, so no more having to go find the crazy 45-volt battery like this system used. Another thing was they got away from using the DC keying. They actually used a tone to key it. When you had this set for radio, and this set for remote radio, and the operator right here keyed their handset, they actually would generate a 3900 hertz tone, which would go over the field wire, and that's what this would see. When it saw the tone, it would key the radio. So basically it would then filter that tone out. So that's how it worked. By doing this, it allowed it to be operated through a switchboard. So in the 60s and 70s, when the Army was working on their radio wire line interfacing and pushing that real heavy for all their communications in the field, you could actually hook this up to a SB22, and actually somebody could call using a TA312, access into this, and talk on a radio. So that was pretty remarkable, and that's how it worked. Like I said, they're basically used at the same time. This was from the 1950s and the early 1980s, and this from the 1960s into the 2000s. Pretty remarkable pieces of equipment. Not really field phones, but they're they use field wire, and they're part of the wired communication system that they use in the field. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.